Disclaimer: this video contains man-love content and it's just for entertainment purposes, so don't spread hate and don't post negative comments. If you're homophobic, please leave. Thank you. The car rolled past tall iron gates guarded by armed men, their heads bowing immediately at the sight of Tiang. Jungkook's heart thumped painfully in his chest as the gate swung open, revealing a sprawling estate bathed in golden light. The mansion was massive, gothic yet elegant, its marble walls glowing under the moonlight. Expensive cars lined the driveway, fountains danced in the courtyard. The guards stood at every corner, their eyes sharp. Jungkook pressed himself against the window, his lips parting in disbelief. He had never seen such wealth or such danger. The car stopped at the grand entrance. Hyung sold out first, his long coat flowing behind him before turning back and extending a hand. Jungkook froze for a moment. He thought about refusing, but the sharp gaze Hyung fixed on him left no room for choice. Trembling, he placed his hand onto Hyung's. Don't walk like you're scared. Hyung's deep voice broke through the silence. Calm, calm but sharp. It makes me feel like I kidnapped you. Jungkook froze for a moment, then quickly corrected his step, forcing himself to walk straight. His heartbeat betrayed him, though loud enough in his chest that he swore Hyung could hear it. The king's grip was firm, steady, pulling Jungkook into the world inside. The mansion was even more breathtaking. Black marble floors, chandeliers, dripping crystals, painting worth millions on the walls, yet the atmosphere was suffocating, laced with power and blood. Welcome to my home, Theong said smoothly, leading Jungkook through the vast halls. From tonight, it's yours too. Jungkook's step faltered. No, this isn't mine. Theong stopped abruptly, turning his head just enough for Jungkook to feel the weight of his stare. You gave yourself to me, didn't you? His voice dropped, velvety, yet dangerous. Then everything here belongs to you as well, whether you like it or not. Jungkook's thought tightened. He lowered his gaze, biting back a trembling reply. They reached one of the inner corridors. Suddenly, Hyung stopped. Jungkook, confused, tilted his head, only for Hyung to turn step into his space. What are you? Before he could finish, Hyung's arm shot out, pressing firmly against the wall behind Jungkook's head. His tall frame leaned forward, his face only inches away. The scent of his cloak, smoky, sharp, wrapped around Jungkook like invisible chain. Jungkook's back hit the wall, his breath hitching. His wide eyes stared at Hyung, panic crawling in his throat. Mr. Mafia King, what are you doing? Theong tilted his head, smirked, tugging at his lips, watching Jungkook's every flinch. His voice was low, whispered, dangerously calm. Why are you trembling, Jungkook? I didn't even touch you. His free hand slid up slowly, tracing the wall beside Jungkook's ear before stopping, hovering almost as if he would catch him completely. Jungkook lashed his fluttery lips, parting in a shaky breath, unable to speak. Theong's eyes darkened, scanning every detail of Jungkook's face, lingering on his parted lips. He leaned closer. No, so close Jungkook could feel his breath coasting around his cheeks. You're interesting when you're scared, Theong murmured, almost like a secret. Jungkook shut his eyes tightly, his hands pressed against the wall as though bracing for something that he didn't want to keep. His chest rose and fell rapidly, panic and confusion battling inside him. And then Theong pulled back, straightening himself, a dangerous smirk curling on his face. You'll get used to me soon enough. With that, he walked away, casually leaving Jungkook pressed against the wall, his heart racing out of control, palms stamped with sweat. Jungkook slid down slightly, letting out a shaky breath. He didn't realize he had been holding. He never felt so trapped, and yet something about the way Theong's smirk lingered in his mind made his stomach twist in ways he didn't understand. Theong resumed walking, pulling him along until they reached a large bedroom. The double door opened, revealing a room bigger than Jungkook's entire apartment. A king-sized bed draped in silk velvet curtains, a fireplace glowing warmly. It was beautiful, but it felt like a cage. Theong finally released Jungkook's wrist, watching him quietly. This is where you'll stay, he said. Eat, sleep, breathe, until you understand what it means to be mine. Jungkook stood frozen in the center of the room. His eyes burned, his chest heavy, but he forced himself to whisper, and if I refuse? The corners of Theong's lips curved into the faintest smirk. He stepped closer, leaning down until his breath ghosted over Jungkook's ear. Then I'll remind you, he murmured, that your friend's life still depends on me. Jungkook's body trembled, tears sliding down his cheeks slightly. Theong straightened, his expression unreadable. He gestured toward the bed. Rest, you'll need it. This house doesn't forgive weakness. And with that, he turned and walked out, the heavy door closing with a soft thud. Jungkook stood there, alone in the golden silence, staring at the luxurious prison around him, his tears dripping onto the marble floor. Jungkook sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, knees pulled closer, fingers twisting in his shirt. The shadows of chandeliers danced across the walls, and his thoughts refused to let him reset. What if Theong didn't let Jackson leave? What if he already hurt him? What if he never reached her? What if what if I was wrong to believe his words? His chest tightened with every possibility, fear mixing with guilt. He wanted, no, he needed to hear their voice to confirm they were safe. He patted his pockets frantically, only to remember his phone wasn't with him. Theong had taken it. Biting his lips, Jungkook stood up. The floorboards creaked. He opened the heavy wooden door of his room, peeking out into the long corridor. The air felt cold here, the silence heavier, the mountain seemed endless, with doors lining the walls. That secret, he wasn't allowed it to know. I just need a phone, he told himself, slipping out quietly. His bare feet pattered against the marble floor as he reached, heart pounding, eyes darting between every shadow. But then he turned a corner too quickly and collided into something solid. No, someone. His balance slipped, his foot catching the edge of the staircase. Panic shot through him as his body tripped dangerously forward. But before he could fall, a strong hand gripped his wrist and yanked him back. In the next second, Jungkook's small frame crashed into a broad chest, into the familiar scent of smoke and spice surrounding him. Theong, the older man's arm was wrapped tightly around his waist, the words still gripping his wrist, pulling him close as though he were a fragile piece of glass. For a second, neither moved. Jungkook's wide-eyed stared up, his lips parted in shock, his heartbeat drumming wildly against Theong's chest. "You're reckless," Theong muttered, his voice slow and sharp, though his hand didn't lose. "Do you have a death wish, Jungkook?" Jungkook's voice shook, his eyes lowering as the fingers clutching Theong's suit jacket. "Mr. Mafia King, I just want you to know." Theong leaned down, his breath brushing against Jungkook's ear, sending shiver over his spine. "You just wanted to know what?" he asked, voice laced with danger, though his grip around Jungkook's waist softened almost unperceptibly. "Answer me." Jungkook swallowed hard, his throat dry. "I wanted to know if my friends are safe. You didn't hurt them, did you?" And that Theong's smirk returned, dark, unreadable. He leaned even closer, his lips dangerously close to Jungkook's trembling one. "But he whispered, "you think so low of me, little rabbit." Jungkook's breath hitched, and his heart sank. His knees weakened under the intensity of Theong's gaze, and though the man was still holding him, Jungkook felt like he was steering on the edge of the cliff. Jungkook's voice cracked as he whispered, "Are they safe?" His doe eyes brimmed with tears. He stubbornly tried to blink back. Theong studied him in silence for a moment, still holding him firmly against his chest. His thumb brushed over Jungkook's wrist, a touch that felt both possessive and strangely steady. Finally he spoke, voice low and commanding, every word like a verdict. "I told you I let them go, and when I speak, Jungkook, it becomes law. Nobody disobeys me, not even fate." A faint smirk darted at Theon's lips, but his eyes remained dark and sharp. "They're safe, alive, on their way back where they belong." He tilted his head, leaning closely, so that his nose brushed against Jungkook's temple, making the younger freeze. "You taught me again, and I might take it personally." Jungkook gulped hard, his throat tight, his body trembling in Theon's iron hold. I wasn't doubting you, Mr. Mafia. I needed to know." Theon chuckled softly, dangerously. "You're braver than you look, little rabbit, asking me for questions when most men can't even look at me in the eyes." He finally loosened his grip, but before Jungkook could step away, Theon did slid a hand up to his jaw, tilting his face upward so their eyes locked. "Remember this," Theon murmured. "When I gave my word, it'd stand above everyone else, even yours." Jungkook's breath caught, his lips parting, but he only managed a smile, shaky nod. "Good boy," Theong said, releasing him at the last with a smirk before walking past, leaving Jungkook beak-kneed in the corridor, clutching his racing heart. Jungkook stood frozen in the corridor long after Theong disappeared, heart still thumping like a drum. "Safe," he said. "They're safe." That should have been enough, but no, his brain wasn't done torturing him. Now he walked alone through the endless mansion. His imagination decided to go wild. The corridors stretched on forever, the chandeliers flickering shadows stretching across the walls like fingers, ghostly fingers Jungkook swallowed. This place looks like every horror movie ever. Why does it have to be so dark? Do rich people not believe in light bulbs? He clutched his shirt, quickening his steps. It's fine, Jungkook. Nothing's here. He whispered to himself. Shh. He froze his voice, his eyes wide darted around as though it was just his bare feet sliding on a marble floor, but in his head it was definitely the sound of a ghost dragging chains. His throat went dry. Mr. Mafia King, he muttered to the empty air. If a ghost eats me, I'm haunting you first. Another flicker of light. He jumped. His heart screamed, ghost, demon, poltergeist, take your pick. Jungkook didn't wait to find out. He broke into a full-on power walk, half running, half tripping over the hall. Why did I ever agree to come here? He hissed, darting around the corner like a kid running from the bogeyman. By the time he reached his room, he practically slammed the door, pressed his back against it, and painted like he would outrun death itself. His heart thundered. He crawled onto the bed, wrapping himself in the blanket like a burrito. Ghosts aren't real, but if they are, I hope they choke on my blanket before they get to me. Meanwhile, somewhere down the hall, Thiang, who had heard every squeaky step, leaned against a pillar, a smirk tugging at his lips. That boy, he muttered to himself, amused. He's terrified of shadows, but brave enough to ask a question to Mafia King. Interesting. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the heavy curtains, but it did little to warm Jungkook's restless body. He had barely slept, tossing under the blanket, haunted not by the ghost this time, but by Hyung's word, his closeness, and the way he had looked at him last night when he finally stepped out of the bathroom in a bathrobe, drying his damp hairs with a towel, his breath caught in his throat. Hyung was in his room, leaning casually against the wall, as though he owned not just the mansion but Jungkook's very space. Mafia King? Jungkook steamed, clutching the edge of his robe tighter. Hyung didn't answer. He pushed himself off the wall and slowly walked forward. Jungkook instinctively stepped back until his back hit the wall, his breath hitching. Hyung pinned both of Jungkook's wrists above his head with one hand, the other resting dangerously close to the knot of the bathrobe. Jungkook's eyes went wide, his lips parting as panic flashed across his face. What are you doing? Jungkook's word died in his throat when Taeyong's finger brushed the fabric. Taeyong leaned closer, his face inches away, almost squeezing the eyes shut, bracing himself for something, anything. But instead of doing anything further, Taeyong let out a faint smirk, released the grip, and stepped back. You get scared easily, little rabbit. He said in his deep, unreadable tone before turning and walking away, leaving Jungkook flushed and frozen against the wall. Curiosity ground and Theon's chest. Jungkook's chest. When his heartbeat settled, he changed and slipped out of the room, pattering through the corridor. He explored quietly, his wide eyes scanning the grand halls and unfamiliar rooms. The silence made him uneasy, but his stomach's tone reminded him of another problem. He was starving. I should find the kitchen, maybe cook something myself, he thought. But when he entered the kitchen, he froze. A tray of freshly prepared food was already set neatly on the counter warm bread, soup, eggs, even fruits. His eyes widened. How can this be here? Who made it? He stared at the food suspiciously, his stomach growing, but his thoughts turning dark. What if he put something in it? What if Mr. Mafikin wants to keep me weak or worse? He shook his head, biting his lips, afraid to even touch the plate. That was when a cold voice brushed against his ear. Eat. Jungkook nearly jumped out of his skin. He spun around to find Theon standing behind him, his aura heavy, his gaze sharp enough to cut through him. Jungkook stammered, taking a step back. Mr. Mafia King. Theon cut him off by grabbing a spoon, scooping some soup, and holding it right in front of Jungkook's lips. You don't get to trust or doubt me. You do as I say. His eyes darkened, voice cold. Eat. Jungkook's throat tightened. He wanted to protest, but under the piercing gaze, his lips parted automatically. Taeyong slipped the spoon into his mouth, watching him with the satisfaction of a predator taming prey. When Jungkook swallowed nervously, Taeyong finally stepped back, smirking faintly. Good boy. Jungkook's cheek flushed with both embarrassment and fear. Before leaving, Taeyong turned slightly, his tone flat, commanding. From today, you'll clean my room twice a day, morning and evening. Jungkook's eyes widened. What? Taeyong's gaze cut him off instantly, sharp and icy. You live under my roof, you follow my rules, disobey, and you won't like the consequences. Jungkook bit his lip, lowering his eyes, his voice slow. Yes, Mr. Mapek King. Taeyong smirked, satisfied, and walked away, leaving Jungkook staring at the food in front of him, his chest pounding, torn between fear, confusion, and a strange pull he didn't want to name. The mansion's corridor echoed with silence as Jungkook entered Theong's room, clutching a duster with shaky hands. His heart was already pounding. Being in Mafia's private space felt like tree pressing into a lion's den. The room was vast, decorated with dark furniture and expensive art. Jungkook bit his lips as he carefully dusted the shelves, determined not to make a mistake, but fate had other plans. As he reached for a painting hanging low on the wall, his elbow brushed against a frame sitting on the side table. It tipped, wobbled, and before he could stop it, the glass shattered across the floor. Jungkook froze, his eyes widening in horror. No, 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 he whispered, dropping into his knees. His hands scrambled to gather the shades. But in his panic, he didn't notice when a sharp edge sliced across his palm. Blood welled up, instantly warm and stinging. He hissed under his breath, but didn't stop. He kept picking up all the glass, desperate to fix what he had broken, terrified of what Mr. Mafia would do if he found out. Then the door opened. Jungkook jolted, his eyes squinting. Hyung stood at the doorway, tall and imposing, his sharp gaze sweeping across the door. It landed on Jungkook, crouched on the floor, his trembled hands hidden behind his back. The silence was suffocating. Finally, Hyung's deep voice cut through the air, calm but deadly serious. You broke my painting. Jungkook's breath caught, his eyes fell on the floor, his shoulders shaking slightly. I'm sorry, Mr. King. It was an accident. I'll fix it, I swear. Hyung stepped forward, his polished shoe clicking against the floor. Jungkook clenched his heart, racing every nerve, screaming punishment was coming. But instead of harshness, Hyung's hand chewed out, not to strike, but to grab Jungkook's wrist. Jungkook gasped, his eyes snapping out in shock. Hyung's sharp eyes narrowed as he turned Jungkook's hand, revealing his crimson streak running across his palm, blood dripping out his wrist. Idiot. Hyung muttered under his breath. Without another word, he pulled Jungkook up and set him down firmly on the edge of the bed. Jungkook stared at him, wide-eyed, unsure if he should be more scared or more confused. Theong disappeared into a cabinet and returned with a first aid kit. His movements were precise, efficient, the kind of hands used to power and destruction, now carefully handling gauze and disinfectant. He knelt before Jungkook, his expressions unreadably, holding Jungkook's hand firmly. He began cleaning the wound. The sting made Jungkook wince, but what unsettled him more was the sight of Mafia King, who so close, so serious, tending to him as though he mattered. Jungkook's lips trembled, his gaze fixed on the floor as Theon cleaned the cut with practiced ease. His sharp sting of disinfectant made him flinch, but not as much as Theon's question had. Tell me, Jungkook, why was you hiding your hand? Jungkook swallowed hard, voice small, shaky. I thought you would be angry that you punished me. For a moment, silence hung between them. Theon's hand stilled, his eyes lifting to lock onto Jungkook's. The weight of his gaze made Jungkook's stomach twist with dread. Then Theong spoke, his voice low, steady, but with an edge sharp enough to slice through the air. If I wanted to do something to you, Jungkook, don't you think I would have done it already? Jungkook's eyes shot up wide with fear, only to find Theong's dark state boring into him. You're in my mansion, with my men scouting every exit. If I wanted to break you, Theong leaned in, his breath brushing against Jungkook's ear. I wouldn't need to wait. Jungkook's whole body went twitched, his heart hammering so loud he swore Theong could hear it. His hands trembled in Theong's firm grip, his voice barely a whisper. Mr. Mafia King. But then Theong leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable, his tone shifting, not soft, but resolute. I didn't bring you here for that. Jungkook blinked, startled. Theon finished bandaging his hand, tying the gauze securely. His eyes stayed on Jungkook, firm and commanding. Don't do cleaning from now on. Just arrange my stuff, okay? After a breath, he continued, just be a good boy and live here. That's all I expect. The words were simple, but to Jungkook, they were heavier than any threat. He lowered his head quietly, his throat tight, his voice no louder than a whisper. Yes, Mr. Mark King. Theon smirked faintly as his obedience before closing the first aid kit and standing tall again, his aura still suffocating the room. To be continued. Subscribe if you like it, press the bell icon for getting immediate notifications for further videos. Thank you for reading.